Much of the extraordinary, unrivaled success of America's space program of the 1960s can be attributed to the visionary brilliance and expertise of two physicists whose names are synonymous with rocketry and manned space flight, Dr. Hermann Oberth and Dr. Wernher von Braun. Both of these men originally earned their stature in the field of rocket design by building ballistic missiles for Adolf Hitler's Third Reich during World War II. However, both of these men modestly admitted the spectacular success of their technical efforts was not theirs alone to claim. They had special assistants. Dr. Oberth cryptically stated, "We cannot take the credit for our record advancement in certain scientific fields alone. We have been helped." When asked by whom, he replied, "The people of other worlds." Another hint of mysterious assistance came from Dr. von Braun in 1959. We find ourselves faced by powers which are far stronger than hitherto assumed, and whose base is at present unknown to us. More I cannot say at present. We are now engaged in entering into closer contact with those powers, and within 6 or 9 months' time it may be possible to speak with more precision on the matter. Just who were the people of other worlds that Dr. Oberth spoke of so blithely? And were both of these esteemed German scientists making oblique reference to one of ufology's most pervasive and tantalizing myths, the alleged link between the Third Reich of pre-World War II Germany and extraterrestrials? Following the First World War, certain occult secret societies emerged in Germany intent upon the imminent arrival of the Aquarian Age, an age they believed would usher humanity into an era of spiritual and technological enlightenment and liberation. Members of these occult societies also believed that ancient lost civilizations once possessed technologies long since forgotten to our modern understanding that allowed them mastery of the seas and the skies and even interstellar space travel. Inspiration to rediscover such wondrous skills sprang from the pages of a novel published in 1871 by Rosicrucian author Edward Bulwer Lytton, entitled The Coming Race. Lytton tells the tale of an intrepid explorer who discovers an advanced race of humans living deep within subterranean caverns who call themselves Vrilya. These beings had formerly been surface dwellers until a global catastrophe, not unlike the Old Testament flood, forced them to take refuge deep within the earth. The survival of this marvelous society was facilitated by their application of a force they referred to as Vril. Or, as Bulwer Lytton wrote, "I should call it electricity, except that it comprehends in its manifold branches other forces of nature, to which, in our scientific nomenclature, differing names are assigned, such as magnetism, galvanism, etc. These people consider that in Vril they have arrived at the unity in natural energetic agencies which has been conjectured by many philosophers above ground." It was supposed by some that Lytton's book was not altogether a work of fiction. As a student of arcane mysteries, he was privy to secrets that lost Lemurian and Atlantean artifacts still existed in clandestine caches hidden away in Tibet and the Gobi Desert. And indeed, ancient Sanskrit texts from India tell of advanced civilizations that flourished before the Great Flood that possessed technologies beyond the understanding of modern science. The epic poem Samarangana Sutradhara makes tantalizing reference to the construction of amazing flying machines. Strong and durable must the body of the Vimana be made, like a great flying bird of light material. Inside one must put the Mercury engine with its iron heating apparatus underneath. By means of power latent in the Mercury, which sets the driving whirlwind in motion, a man sitting inside may travel a great distance in the sky. The movements of the Vimana are such that it can vertically ascend, vertically descend, or move slanting forwards and backwards. With the help of machines, human beings can fly through the air, and the heavenly beings can come down to earth. German Oriental scholars and occultists of the Tula and Vril societies regarded such ancient myths as greatly significant, and during the lull between the First and Second World Wars, diligent efforts were put forth to seek out the source of this legendary energy and harness it as a viable technological reality. Mastery of an occult force such as Vril would not only assure German technical dominance, it would ultimately liberate Germany from any crippling codependence upon the international petroleum cartels dominated by Germany's conquerors, the United States and Britain. Initiates of both the Tula and Vril societies were determined to develop an alternative science and alternative technologies based on principles possessed by the great lost civilization of Atlantis. A spiritual dynamo technology superior to the mechanistic notions of modern science. Thus, to rediscover this source of universal free energy and make it readily available as a benefit to the German people became their goal. Tula member and physics professor Dr. W. O. Schumann of the Technical University in Munich declared, "In everything we recognize two principles that determine the events: light and darkness, good and evil, creation and destruction. As in electricity, we know plus and minus. It is always either or. Everything destructive is of satanic origin. Everything creative is divine. Every technology based on explosion or combustion has thus to be called satanic. The coming new age will be an age of new, positive, divine technology." Hence the goal to harness Vril, Prana, the fundamental limitless cosmic life force energy, a power source that would function harmoniously with our natural world, became an integral focus of these German secret societies. At the very heart of the Vril legend was a striking beauty named Maria Orsic. This gifted medium was leader of the Vrillerinnen, a team of psychic girls serving the Vril Gesellschaft, who characteristically wore their hair in long horsetails, contrary to the popular short, bobbed hairstyles of that era. The ladies of the Vril actually claimed their long hair acted as cosmic antennas that helped facilitate their occult contact with beings from beyond. Presumably through a telepathic form of automatic writing, Maria Orsic made contact with an off-world civilization which was offering just the kind of alternative technology the German secret societies were looking for. As the legend goes, a fateful meeting was held in 1919 at an old hunting lodge near Berchtesgaden, where Maria Orsic presented to a small group assembled from the Tula, Vril, and Black Sun societies telepathic messages she claimed to have received from an extraterrestrial civilization existing in the distant Aldebaran solar system, 68 light-years away in the constellation of Taurus. One set of Maria's channel transmissions was found to be in a secret German Templar script unknown to her. A second series of transmissions appeared to be written in an ancient Eastern language, which Babylonian scholars within the Tula group recognized as ancient Sumerian. Maria Orsic, along with Sigrun, another of the Vril Society's female mediums, began the task of translating these transmissions and discovered they contained instructions for building a circular flying machine. It is worth noting here that the Vril Society traced its philosophical origins back to a secret Bavarian Gnostic Templar order, styling itself as the Lords of the Black Stone, founded in 1221, an order steeped in ancient Babylonian and Sumerian theologies. Members of this Templar group displayed the winged bull for their symbol, an obvious reference to Taurus, and according to the order's traditions, face-to-face contact with these beings from Aldebaran occurred during the Middle Ages. If indeed a high-tech civilization actually existed in the Aldebaran star system, what would account for their possible motivation to assist the Vril Group and Germany to develop advanced technologies? Veteran UFO researcher Wendell Stevens tells us that rather than a militant gesture of aid to aggressive Nazis, the Aldebarans perceived an economic disparity in Earth cultures that fueled perpetual wars and conflict. To alleviate this disparity, the Aldebarans reasoned that by offering free energy technologies used to create affordable mass transportation devices, a new innovative generation of industries promoting prosperity and greater peaceful interaction between nations might result, thus diminishing violent wars. Clearly such a plan resonated with the members of the Vril Society and their dream for a utopian new world based on alternative science. Upon studying these otherworldly designs, Dr. W. O. Schumann and his associates from the Technical University in Munich and the Tula Society realized the channeling actually contained viable physics, and over the ensuing years construction was initiated to make this flying machine a reality. By 1922, development of a working prototype was underway. Although the first manned disc crashed on its maiden flight, a redesigned 5-meter RFZ-2 was successfully test-flown in 1934, and eventually flying disc development was taken over by Division SSE-4 of Hitler's Third Reich. Inspired by the utopian visions of both Tula and Vril Society ideals, Adolf Hitler rose to political power under the swastika banner of Germany's National Socialist Party. Yet despite his professed aim to create a world of cosmic harmony, Hitler plunged Europe into the altogether destructive Second World War by sending his panzer tank divisions and infantry into Poland in 1939. And although all German secret societies were outlawed by the Nazi Party, the Tula and Vril Gesellschafts maintained their autonomy, and development of Vril levitating saucer craft continued, despite funding competition from conventional Luftwaffe war production imperatives. Aerotechnical Unit V7 designed a number of hybrid saucers that combined both exotic anti-gravity and conventional turbojet propulsion systems, creating vertical lift craft that were essentially precursors to modern helicopters. Although some of these bizarre designs were successfully flown, they earned dubious reputations as clumsy gas hogs that spent more time in maintenance than actually flying. However, the anti-gravity Vril designs demonstrated more efficiency. It is important to note that the Vril craft did not fly in the traditional sense. Like huge gyroscopes, these craft levitated by generating their own discrete gravitational fields. Thus the distinctly separate, highly classified SSE-4 unit bore the sole secret responsibility of developing Hitler's dream of free energy flight machines. This amazing myth implies that German engineers had successfully mastered a form of levitation technology by designing a torsion propulsion engine capable of sustaining a controlled energy vortex, which would supply the housing vehicle with its own discrete gravitational field. Although no specific engine design details have surfaced, the mechanics inferred from rudimentary schematics show a uniform circular disc shell mounted around a central sphere propulsion unit, presumably a pressurized container holding a liquid medium, perhaps mercury, which was made to spin at an extremely high velocity. The intense centrifugal force generated by this spinning medium would in turn create a central cone of vortex energy that would generate a uniform self-sustaining gravitational bubble surrounding the craft. Varying the rotational speeds of the centrifugal spin would allow the disk vehicle to levitate, accelerate, or even sufficiently distort the surrounding electromagnetic field so as to become invisible. As stated by author Nick Cook, in his book The Hunt for Zero Point. Manipulate the inertia of an object, and you remove its resistance to acceleration. Put in space, and it would continue to accelerate all the way up to light speed and maybe even beyond. Manipulate the local gravity field around an object, and you could get it to levitate. By 1941, this levitation effect was successfully applied with the Vril II craft, which was reportedly employed for transatlantic reconnaissance flights. This craft employed the Schumann levitator drive for vertical lift, and when activated, the craft displayed effects commonly described in many UFO accounts: blurring of visible contours and luminous ionization colors relative to the craft's engine acceleration, varying from orange to green and blue to white. As well, the craft made radical 90-degree turns characteristic of UFO flight. Tragically, the Reich diverted the peaceful intent of the Aldebaran levitation technology, and following the success of the RFZ-2, a single-pilot combat model was designed. The advanced Vril I Jaeger fighter was capable of 12,000 kilometers per hour and amazing full-speed right-angle turns, with no adverse G-effects on the pilot. Since the craft flew in a self-contained envelope of its own gravitational field, the pilot experienced no sense of motion or inertia. Subsequent levitation craft advances between 1941 and 1944 spawned the Haunebu series, the heavy hitters of the Reich's saucer fleet, driven by powerful tachyon magnetogravitic engines called Tula tachyonators. These armored saucer ships of varying size came equipped with armaments such as panzer tank cannon turrets mounted to the underside, as well as Klystron laser cannons. By Christmas of 1943, medium Maria Orsic of the Vril Gesellschaft claimed that subsequent transmissions from Aldebaran revealed there were 2 habitable planets orbiting that star, and that the ancient Mesopotamian civilization of Sumeria was linked to earlier colonies of Aldebaran explorers. The seers discovered that the Aldebaran written language was identical to that of the Sumerians, and was phonetically similar to that of spoken German. It was also revealed that a dimension channel or wormhole existed connecting our 2 solar systems. Thus, in January of 1944, to bolster Germany's faltering war efforts, Adolf Hitler and his deputy Heinrich Himmler authorized an audacious plan to send a Vril 7 saucer ship into the dimensional channel, perhaps to secure assistance from the Aldebaran civilization. The venture resulted in near disaster. The Vril 7 returned with its hull reportedly aged, as if it had been flying for 100 years, and its surface damaged in several places. Meanwhile, the Allies sampled an unpleasant taste of the deadly weapons potential of German saucers. In an account investigated by Wendell Stevens of a massive bombing raid in 1944 launched against the critical ball bearing plant at Schweinfurt, a former Polish POW claimed that within a matter of hours a squadron of 10 to 15 Nazi discs managed to obliterate as many as 150 British and American bombers, 1/4 of the entire bomber contingent. 2 techniques were employed against this vast bomber squadron. One involved a device called a motor stoppel, a Klystron electromagnetic interference device which caused the Allied aircraft engines to simply shut down. The other was to infuse the atmosphere ahead of the bombers with a highly flammable aerosol, which exploded as the planes with their internal combustion engines flew into it. However, despite such tactical success, the Germans did not press this technological advantage to secure ultimate victory. With the military fate of the Reich in doubt, an ambitious, energetic general rose within the SS inner circle elite to a level of power that rivaled perhaps even that of the Führer himself. Hans Kammler, a protege of the SS Chief of Staff Heinrich Himmler, had earned a reputation with his skills for rapid deployment and implementation of underground manufacturing facilities and vast mobilization of slave labor consignments from concentration camps. By 1945, Kammler had secured control over all top-secret SS projects that were missile or aircraft related. Certainly Vril projects would have been one of his foremost priorities. A cunning, shrewd, and lethal opportunist, Kammler easily bore the qualifications to mastermind construction of an emergency refuge at the South Pole, the last untamed continent on the planet. And as of April 17, 1945, Kammler disappeared from Germany, presumably escaping capture, aboard a lumbering six-engine Junkers 390 America bomber, bound for an unknown destination. Neither was military assistance forthcoming from Aldebaran, but perhaps safe haven was offered instead as a massive 250-foot diameter Hanibu 3 dreadnought armed with 4 triple-gun, heavy-caliber naval turrets and capable of spaceflight was allegedly completed by April of 1945. With the specter of Russian, British, and American armies all relentlessly advancing on the German heartland, supplies, scientists, and saucer components were being steadily evacuated from Europe by U-boats to secret enclaves in Germany's Antarctic colony, Neuschwabenland, a vast tract of land at the South Pole which had been annexed by Germany in 1938. Just 1 month prior to the Hanibu 3's completion, a cryptic message was sent by Maria Orsic to all members of the Vril Society, simply stating, "None are staying here." The psychic medium Maria was never heard from again, perhaps having escaped, like Kammler, to South America, the Antarctic, or possibly even Aldebaran. By inevitably seizing the rocket facilities and personnel at Peenemünde, the advancing Allied Army leadership was only too well aware of how dangerously advanced German technology had become. Despite the Third Reich's unconditional surrender in 1945, a potential Nazi threat still haunted Allied intelligence. Had the German High Command sacrificed its European operation to buy time for installation of a fallback position in the Antarctic, capable of launching future retaliations from its South Polar redoubt? A key component to this legend is the account of Operation High Jump. In January of 1947, Secretary of the Navy James Forrestal ordered that an American military task force, complete with 13 ships, including an aircraft carrier, seaplanes, helicopters, and 4,000 combat troops, be dispatched to the Antarctic under the command of Admiral Richard E. Byrd for the stated purpose of mapping the coastline. This task force was provisioned for an 8-month polar stay, and though Byrd's group did discover fresh water, thermal heated lakes, as well as vast coal deposits, no mention of a Nazi presence ever made the official record. However, after only 8 weeks and an undisclosed loss of planes and personnel, Byrd withdrew his forces. According to rumor, Byrd encountered overwhelming hostile action he described as fighters that are able to fly from one pole to another with incredible speed. He also intimated that he had engaged a German contingent being assisted as well by an advanced civilization with formidable technologies. Full details of what occurred with Byrd's expedition remain shrouded in mystery. After extensive debriefing at the Pentagon, Byrd was ordered to keep silent about his experiences at the South Pole. Also, it should be noted 2 years later in 1949, Admiral Byrd's superior, James Forrestal, retired and allegedly started to talk. Forrestal served on President Truman's classified Majestic 12 UFO research team, but was reportedly opposed to heavy UFO secrecy. He was placed in a Bethesda Naval Hospital psychiatric ward for a reported nervous breakdown and was prevented from seeing anyone, including his wife. Shortly thereafter, he died in a fall from his 16th floor hospital room window. His death was labeled a suicide. But again, considering the question posed at the outset of this essay, could the advanced Antarctic civilization suggested by Admiral Byrd be the same extraterrestrials alluded to by both von Braun and Oberth? Could these people of other worlds be Germany's mysterious allies from Aldebaran? Such is the legend of Vril and the Third Reich's levitating disk projects. Of course, had all discussion of flying saucers ended in 1945, it would be perfectly simple to dismiss the whole myth as preposterous nonsense. However, as we well know, persistent reports of UFOs and circular flying craft have remained a ubiquitous enigma worldwide for all the decades since World War II. And as long as this mystery goes unanswered, the riddle of Nazi saucers remains an urgent paradox that spins a kaleidoscope of demanding questions. Viewed from the aspect of classical physics, the whole myth is easily dismissed as fanciful rubbish. The lurid tabloid notions of occult channeling with space brothers from Aldebaran and Nazis armed with flying saucers and ray guns sounds like the most outrageous science fiction. However, this same legend, reconsidered from the radically altered view of quantum physics, takes on dramatic plausibility. Was the Vril Society simply making practical application of the unified field? Is Vril, or the unity in natural energetic agencies that Edward Bulwer-Lytton described, far from pulp fiction, but a remarkably accurate description of zero-point energy that pervades the entire universe? Did ancient lost civilizations of Earth share understanding with extraterrestrial civilizations among the stars that the universe is in fact an ocean of limitless energy? Could it be that a handful of daring German visionaries discovered secrets of harnessing this energy? And ultimately, who were the real victors in World War II? Did a contingent of German physicists and engineers and military personnel successfully drop off the grid in 1945 and establish a new colony totally self-sufficient and independent of the global petroleum cartels? And are the fundamentals of free energy production fully known and deliberately withheld at the cost of destroying our environment simply to serve the greed of multinational corporate and banking interests to this day? And is this free energy propulsion the ultimate secret behind the UFO cover-up? Of course, in the years immediately following World War II, the German saucer mystery compounded even more. In June of 1947, a private pilot named Kenneth Arnold reported a formation of 9 shiny objects cruising along at an unprecedented speed of 1,200 miles per hour in the vicinity of Mount Rainier, Washington. In Arnold's words, the craft flew like a saucer would if you skipped it across the water. Seizing upon his words, the press launched a tabloid fascination with flying saucers. However, Arnold described the craft he saw as actually crescent-shaped, like flying wings, which, coincidentally, was another airform perfected by the German Horten brothers during the war. It was suspected that captured German aircraft were being studied at a joint United States-British facility in western Canada close to Washington State. 4 months later, in September of 1947, just 8 months after Admiral Byrd's aborted mission to the Antarctic, the Strategic Air Command undertook a detailed mapping and reconnaissance mission of the North Pole. An extensive B-29 support base was established at Fort Richardson, Alaska, but aside from cameras, these bombers were crammed with state-of-the-art electromagnetic scanners, sensors, and magnetic emissions detectors. And just as Byrd described, high-speed craft capable of flying from pole to pole were again encountered at the Arctic as well. Debriefed flight crews reported seeing metallic vertical lift saucers parked on the ice packs, flying in and out of the water, as well as dogging the B-29s. All evidence tapes, film canisters, and documentation were immediately classified and rushed back to Washington, D.C. According to the captured records, the Germans also had construction plans for a Zeppelin-sized levitating cylinder ship called the Andromeda machine. This 330-foot behemoth was capable of carrying as many as 3 of the smaller Vril and Haunebu scout ships. In the early 1950s, a California man named George Adamski photographed a UFO remarkably similar to this design. Later, Adamski claimed to have contact with a Nordic-looking extraterrestrial near Desert Center, California, who claimed to be from the planet Venus. However, it should be noted that photographs of the little scout craft this alien flew showed a design virtually identical to the German Haunebu II. Although Adamski was later debunked as a fraud, reports of UFOs identical to the Venusian scout ship continued to surface worldwide. In 1954, President Dwight Eisenhower was allegedly secreted away to a meeting with extraterrestrials at Muroc Airfield near Palm Springs, California. One particular group was reported to be Nordic-looking, and they offered Eisenhower free energy technology in exchange for nuclear disarmament. Ike declined. And as the story goes, these Nordic ETs subsequently met with Pope Pius XII at the Vatican as well. And of course it remains common knowledge that during the war, Germany had cordial relations with Argentina and other Latin American countries. And by a curious coincidence, even today, UFOs are commonly reported the full length and breadth of South America, along with tales of hidden German bases in the ice peaks of Peru and the vast jungles of Brazil. But perhaps the most blatant inference of a German connection with UFOs comes from the famed Billy Meyer case in Switzerland. In 1975, 30 years after the disappearance of the Vril Society leaders, a Swiss farmer claimed to have contact with a girl from the Pleiades who bore the pseudonym Semyasi and a striking resemblance to the Vril Orionen from 1919. This space girl also wore long blonde hair, spoke fluent Austrian German, and candidly shared comprehensive knowledge about the German saucer projects of the Third Reich. Were Semyasi's beam ships actually modern versions of the old Haunebus? Do we dare suppose that the Fourth Reich, an off-the-books Nazi civilization, has survived since World War II, that still exists in ice caverns beneath the Antarctic? A hidden nation that thrives thanks to free energy Vril technologies, while the ignorant, expendable surface dwellers continue to choke in the poisoned atmosphere of their internal combustion, junk technology, automobiles, airplanes, and industries. Could it be that a whole variety of incredible free energy technologies remain deliberately withheld from global access by the surface world's managing industrial elite? Meanwhile, the quest to solve the mysteries of Nazi saucers and the secrets from Aldebaran certainly has gained more relevance in the early years of the 21st century. It seems an irony that much like pre-World War II Germany, we find that Western civilization is dangerously dependent upon dwindling fossil fuel resources. Is there a free energy, anti-gravity answer to this dilemma? To conclude this essay, I must caution this story is virtually all legend. There is little or no hard evidence to fully verify the authenticity of this tale. The conjecture offered here is cobbled together from the writings of Jan van Helsing, Vladimir Trzynski, Nick Cook, Timothy Good, Desmond Leslie, Wendell Stevens, and a website called Gray Falcon, as well as the video UFO Secrets of the Third Reich. Either this story is pure fantasy, or Nazi secrets of anti-gravity technology were gobbled up at the end of the war by Allied intelligence and given a security classification above top secret, with all evidence meticulously hidden or destroyed. However, it should be noted that anti-gravity propulsion systems, such as the Vril legend suggests, would make all aerospace and avionic technologies obsolete overnight. And these are huge multi-billion-dollar industries directly tied to the international petroleum cartels. Surely these combined military-industrial interests would possess the means and the motive to obliterate any conclusive history of German anti-gravity research. Allegedly, the Rockefeller Foundation paid $139,000 in 1946 to commission the publishing of an official history of World War II that deleted any and all references to the mystical and occult interests of the Third Reich. In 1946, the Rockefeller Foundation was fully financed by Standard Oil. And as a final postscript, I must offer the mystery of the TR-3B aircraft, allegedly one of the latest high-tech stealth flying machines engineered by the United States Defense Department and rumored to be presently operational, is the Astra, otherwise known as the TR-3B. This astounding craft is delta-shaped and comes in two sizes, one 300 feet long and the other 600 feet long. The Astra is capable of vertical lift and all the other radical moves typically associated with UFOs. Its propulsion is described as magnetic field disruptor, i.e. anti-gravity, created by spinning mercury plasma at 50,000 RPMs, pressurized to 250,000 psi. This reduces the craft's gravitational mass by 89%. Multi-mode impulse rockets at each corner of the Delta configuration supply the remaining 11% propulsion. Could this plane be the modern stepchild of the Honeyboo 3? Thus the Aldebaran mystery comes full circle to the Vril Society's original fascination with lost technologies from antiquity, for according to the ancient Sanskrit texts, the name Astra referred to a terrible airborne weapon. How much real truth is there to the tantalizing myth of the Third Reich's flying saucer projects? Growing international popularity of this pervasive legend has recently surfaced in a comedy movie classic called Iron Sky that features a Nazi saucer invasion from the moon. Yet despite the melodramatic and engaging mystery of this legend, do we dare suspect this tale possesses any shred of actual fact? Scholarly UFO researchers are quick to disdainfully dismiss this story as pure urban legend nonsense, or worse, crackpot neo-Nazi propaganda. Propaganda it may be, but perhaps of a far more sophisticated nature. What's to say this story is not the propaganda of a significant and powerful, off-the-books military-industrial complex, a Nazi international geopolitical consortium that has successfully survived all the decades since World War II. In fact, the deeper one delves into the history of the Second World War, the more our accepted history of that massive conflict appears to be an urban legend fiction itself. Each year, more hidden details are uncovered, revealing a bizarre reality far stranger than any fiction. Scholarly researchers also insist the lack of any definitive, official paper trail documentation makes the Nazi saucer legend untenable. And those few design schematics that have surfaced, they reject as spurious fabrications. In other words, they preserve their conservative academic propriety by insisting the notion of free energy, levitating saucer craft built by the Third Reich is pure poppycock. Of course, the very same was said of Nazi atomic bomb research until documentation recently surfaced has revealed the Third Reich successfully exploded a nuclear bomb as early as December of 1944. Surely these astute scholars must admit that lack of a documented paper trail is no guarantee that certain Nazi military research projects never took place. Of course, the ultimate trump card debunk argues that Hitler's boasted miracle weapons arsenals of flying saucers, death rays, or otherwise utterly failed to rescue Germany from defeat in 1945, which proves that any such weapons never existed in the first place. But practically speaking, the advantage of a circular vertical lift flying machine is not such an outlandish proposition. Designs originally explored by Nazi engineers have subsequently been advanced to the highly successful application of helicopters in virtually all tactical operations since 1945, which successfully demonstrates what Nazi technicians were trying to accomplish in the first place: to produce an effective combat aircraft that was not dependent upon vast airfields hopelessly vulnerable to enemy bomber attacks. And war records do indicate the Germans were designing a whole variety of conventionally powered turbojet vertical lift aircraft, including circular discs, for just such purpose. And certain flying saucer prototypes may have actually survived the war. Sighting of a UFO virtually identical to the Nazi flying top was reported by a rancher in Argentina in 1950. Even today, the ultra-high-tech futuristic Venus project features prototype vertical lift hovercraft conceptually identical to the Nazi flying top. But these exotic helicopter prototypes were Luftwaffe, German Air Force projects. The notorious levitating disc designs were said to be absolutely exclusive to and deeply classified within occult Nazi SS operations. Presumably, these super-secret craft employed torsion physics propulsion techniques that remain to this day jealously guarded secrets. Of course, the charming Aldebaran myth implies the mystical secrets of torsion levitation were channeled to the psychic ladies of the Vril Society by extraterrestrial aliens in 1919. But in point of fact, this same torsion technology was explicitly described by the visionary inventor from Croatia, Nikola Tesla, years earlier in 1908. In fact, the application of spinning torsion physics propulsion was also explicitly described centuries earlier in the ancient Sanskrit text Samarangana Sutradhara. The great flying ships called Vimanas levitated by use of a mercury engine. By means of power latent in the mercury which sets the driving whirlwind in motion, a man sitting inside may travel a great distance in the sky. Reference to the driving whirlwind is an obvious reference to torsion physics, a propulsion technology fully understood by lost civilizations thousands of years ago. Nikola Tesla clearly implied that vortex energy could be harnessed for multiple uses depending upon the intensity of the torsion field created. We can clearly see the spectrum of torsion spin effects demonstrated in a child's toy gyroscope, or a destructive tornado, or even a magnificent spiraling galaxy. Tesla fully understood the awesome potentials of torsion physics to allow manipulation of the physical medium of time, space, and gravity. And, as stated by author Nick Cook in his book, The Hunt for Zero Point, manipulate the local gravity field around an object and you could get it to levitate. But far more than mere levitation propulsion, visionary Nikola Tesla foresaw the ultimate power latent in this technology. To cause at will the birth and death of matter would be man's grandest deed, which would make him the master of physical creation, make him fulfill his ultimate destiny. And solid evidence does exist that Nazi physicists were in fact seriously engaged in exploring the potentials of torsion physics, but not exclusively for levitating aircraft propulsion. Mastery of physical creation may well have been the goal of the mysterious Die Glocke or Nazi Bell project. To guarantee extreme secrecy, high-priority Nazi SS research was strictly compartmentalized. So while one division of SS projects may have been exploring the potential of levitation physics for propulsion, a totally separate SS project may have been exploring the weapons potential of Tesla's torsion physics with the Nazi Bell. Within a cylinder device, roughly the size of a camping trailer, tremendous torsion field distortion was generated by counter-rotating mercury plasma. This plasma was then pulsed by extremely high voltage direct current electricity as if to push the very limits of torsion potential, to distort the geometric fabric of time and space itself. But what was the Bell's true purpose? At the same time, in late 1944, when the Nazis also succeeded in detonating an atomic bomb in the Baltic, it is also quite likely that they were seeking a vastly more powerful device, a plasma wonder weapon generating far more destructive force than even a hydrogen bomb, capable of destroying not just a city, but perhaps an entire continent, or even a planet. Whatever its use, the Bell project and its designers escaped capture and completely vanished just before the end of the war. Researchers claim the deadly radioactive effects of the mercury plasma used in the Die Glocke project made levitating discs unsuited for human pilots. Yet it seems reasonable that less powerful torsion fields could be designed to accommodate pilot safety, or a non-toxic spinning medium might serve just as well. Austrian forest warden, naturalist, philosopher, and inventor Victor Schauberger, whose observations revealed the vortex as nature's most efficient means for the transmission of energy, demonstrated a powerful 10-foot diameter vortex propulsion machine at a facility in Vienna that generated diamagnetic levitation, with results so spectacular that it shot straight through the 24-foot-high hangar ceiling. Schauberger's repulsine engine was powered only with water. Exactly how much of Schauberger's research was actually used by the Reich is unclear, but by the end of the war, as a prized captive of the American forces, he was deported to the United States, where authorities claimed rights to all his ideas, thoughts, and discoveries, past as well as future. His torsion research to this day remains classified. But aside from flying saucer fantasies, the Nazis did possess a supersonic fighter that was deadly reality. The Horten Flying Wing displayed superior combat design to any Allied aircraft of that era, and its sophistication was proven as recently as 2008 when Northrop Grumman aircraft designers built a full-size reproduction of the Flying Wing constructed to match the aircraft's radar signature. The HO-229 reproduction was tested at the company's classified radar cross-section test range at Tejon, California, using the same HF VHF frequencies used by the British Chain Home radar system in the 1940s. Testing showed the aircraft's minimal radar profile, combined with its high-speed capabilities, would have given the British defenses less than 3 minutes to respond, which would not have been enough time to scramble Spitfire fighter defense. In other words, the British Chain Home radar system could have been totally destroyed in a well-calculated flying wing surgical strike, leaving England almost totally vulnerable to Nazi bombers. The Horten Flying Wing was no esoteric fantasy, yet despite this plane's superior performance, why was it not generally deployed for combat? Herein lays the strangest mystery of all the Nazi special weapons projects. Even though they clearly possessed superior tactical weapons technologies, they did not deploy them to win their European operation. In fact, the Flying Wing design was so successful, the German High Command pressed the Horten brothers to design a huge intercontinental bomber capable of delivering an atomic bomb attack on both New York and Washington, D.C., the America Bomber. Fortunately, the war ended before this deadly operation was launched, but following the Nazi surrender, the Horten brothers happily relocated to Argentina, where they continued designing supersonic fighter jets for President Juan Perón. And even today we see the phantom reminder of their flying wing design in our own B-2 stealth bomber. Perhaps the most puzzling aspect of the Nazi flying saucer enigma remains the account of Admiral Richard E. Byrd's legendary expedition to the Antarctic in January 1947. 1.5 years after the official end of World War II, a powerful Navy task force comprised of an aircraft carrier, 12 warships, a submarine, over 20 planes and helicopters, as well as a crew of 4,000 men, set off for the stated purpose of mapping the South Pole. Although Byrd himself stated in plain language, the purposes of the operation are primarily of a military nature. He did not divulge any further details. Allegedly, the unstated purpose of this operation was to locate and engage a remaining Nazi military stronghold believed to exist somewhere under the ice of Germany's Neuschwabenland territory. This grand adventure was well documented in a feature MGM motion picture called The Secret Land. However, the obvious shortcoming of this operation seemed a lack of fighter planes. The documentary is careful to show absolutely no combat aircraft aboard the carrier USS Philippine Sea. 6 R-4D reconnaissance planes monopolized the carrier's deck space. Martin Mariner seaplanes featured prominently in this operation as well, yet even these lumbering aircraft, useful in anti-submarine operations, would have been no match for Nazi combat fighters. The 6 R-4Ds in Byrd's squadron were fitted with super-secret trimetricon spy cameras, and each plane was trailing a magnetometer searching for any anomalies in the Earth's magnetism, indicating hollow spaces under the ice. These reconnaissance planes, once launched from the carrier, were to permanently remain at the pole. It's assumed a full complement of combat fighters was likely stored below decks on the USS Philippine Sea. But although Byrd's task force was provisioned for an 8-month stay at the pole, he withdrew his forces after only 8 weeks. So what really happened? Upon his return, Byrd allegedly told the members of a special congressional investigating committee, in case of a new war, the United States would be attacked by fighters that are able to fly from one pole to the other with incredible speed. Lee Van Atta, the El Mercurio newspaper correspondent from Santiago, Chile, who was allowed to accompany the expedition, wrote, Admiral Byrd declared today that it was imperative for the United States to initiate immediate defense measures against hostile airplanes originating from polar regions. As well, recently released Russian documentary, The Third Reich Operation UFO, shares the alleged account of an eyewitness to an enemy attack. Pilot John Sayerson, who claimed his ship, the escort carrier USS Casablanca, was also part of Byrd's task force, and that Navy Corsair fighters actually engaged strange saucer craft attacking the ships. However, official Navy records fail to list the Casablanca as part of Byrd's task force. So, was this account a fabrication, or were Navy files doctored? Sayerson's account actually contains a measure of logic, considering any naval operation of that size would not chance exposure to hostile forces without adequate air defense. Full details of what occurred with Byrd's expedition remain shrouded in mystery. After extensive debriefing at the Pentagon, Byrd was ordered to keep silent about his experiences at the South Pole. The full truth of Operation High Jump remains classified. Yet one persistent enigma remains. Admiral Byrd's famous diary claims that on his last flight over the pole, his plane was hijacked by flying saucers, and for 3 hours he was sequestered into the hollow earth by mysterious German-speaking Nordics, a tale dismissed as pure fantasy by most researchers. However, the Secret Land documentary, while it makes no mention whatever of Nazis at the South Pole, does verify that Byrd's last flight over the pole was in fact delayed for 3 hours due to engine trouble. Fact or fiction? We may never know. But did the Navy's secret military encounter at the South Pole precipitate a Nazi response later in 1947? In June of that year, unidentified flying wings were reported buzzing Mount Rainier, Washington, and a month later a craft of unknown origin was reported crashed near Roswell, New Mexico, violating the airspace of our most top-secret defense installations. A vast mythos has been meticulously woven around this notorious incident, explaining it away as an extraterrestrial spaceship. Officially, the wreckage was dismissed as a crashed weather balloon. But why would simple weather balloon debris be sequestered and rushed to the Air Technical Command Center in Dayton, Ohio for immediate examination? Regarding UFOs, Air Force Lieutenant General Nathan Twining, Chief of Air Material Command, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Dayton, Ohio, stated in a secret memo dated September 13, 1947, "The phenomenon reported is something real and not visionary or fictitious. There are objects probably approximating the shape of a disk of such appreciable size as to appear to be as large as man-made aircraft. The reported operating characteristics, such as extreme rates of climb, maneuverability, and action, which must be considered evasive when sighted or contacted by friendly aircraft and radar, lend belief to the possibility that some of the objects are controlled either manually automatically or remotely. But 3 months earlier, on July 16, 1947, in the official Roswell Air Accident Report, Twining's white-hot intelligence estimate contained explicit descriptions of the Roswell disk that bore an uncanny similarity to the Nazi Haunebu II design. The circular disc-shaped platform design does not resemble any design currently under development by this command nor of any Navy project. Lack of wings, flaps, stabilizers, and surface control features suggests that the craft is a lifting body. The absence of provisions, berthing compartments, and storage areas suggest the notion that this craft may be a short-range reconnaissance platform. There is a flight deck located inside the cupola section. It is round and domed at the top. Coupled with the circular airfoil design for lift, the craft would presumably have an unlimited range and airspeed. It is equally uncanny to consider this craft's description almost perfectly describes a flying saucer captured on 8mm movie film by Madeline Rotifer in Silver Spring, Maryland, in February of 1965. Noted researcher Joseph P. Farrell, author of Roswell and the Reich, sums up the Nazi-Roswell connections like this. What crashed at Roswell was not only exotic, but was a wholly terrestrial technology that was also Nazi, but not some black project that was being conducted by post-war paperclip Nazis in conjunction with the American military. It was the recovery of something not under post-war control of any of the victorious Allied powers that defeated the Third Reich. Therefore, what crashed at Roswell represented a post-war continuation of some of the black projects conducted and deployed by a kind of post-war extraterritorial Nazi state. Farrell further observed it was simply untenable for the American military to admit to the American people that the old enemy was not only alive and well, but violating our airspace and reconnoitering our most secret defense installations with impunity. Faced with such a reality, the military had no option but to bury the truth in a multi-layered tapestry of disinformation and an elaborately fabricated fiction about crashed extraterrestrials, while forming a top-secret research group to investigate the debris and establish some kind of defensive response. Of course, after the end of the war, untold treasures of Nazi technology passed into the hands of America's military-industrial complex, as well as the Nazi scientists and administrators who designed them, thanks to Operation Paperclip. The American space program, NASA, and the Central Intelligence Agency absorbed vast numbers of former Nazi personnel into their operations. Their records were expunged of Nazi affiliation to expedite their enlistment into the fight against Russian communist aggression. Yet just how much Nazi ideology was grafted onto the American psyche as well by this covert infiltration? During the course of the war, the Third Reich organized a special state-funded metaphysical research group called the Ahnenerbe Society. Astrologer Wilhelm Wolff in 1939 described the ultimate goal of Nazi occult Ahnenerbe research was to harness not only natural but also supernatural forces, all intellectual, natural, and supernatural sources of power, from modern technology to medieval black magic, and from the teachings of Pythagoras to the Faustian pentagram incantation, were to be exploited for the interests of final victory. Many of the Teutonic esoteric occult traditions were woven into the mystical rites of the Nazi SS, a secret society comparable to Freemasonry. And like Freemasonry, its most guarded secrets were held by only initiates of the highest degree. Undoubtedly, Nazi SS initiates, absorbed by Operation Paperclip into American defense and space industries, would attract like-minded occult brethren at the highest corporate and political levels as well. Author-researcher Peter Levenda observed, "I believe that the entire racial theory of Nazism was a comfortable environment for these men. They were, after all, from privileged backgrounds, old money, power, prestige, the right companies, the right schools, the right fraternities, such as the infamous Skull and Bones at Yale, to which generations of the Bush family belonged. The Nazis embodied the secret dreams and unspoken loyalties of these men, the public acknowledgement of all that the American elite held dear." President Dwight Eisenhower, former Supreme Commander of Allied forces during the war, very likely sensed the subtle Nazification of our nation's defense establishment when he warned of the growing danger of the military-industrial complex to American democratic ideals in 1961. Had our own defense and aerospace industries adopted an Americanized version of the Ahnenerbe Society, combining both sophisticated high-tech research with medieval black magic? Is it sheer coincidence that at the very highest levels of our National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, during the 1960 Apollo moon missions, we saw the convergence of three powerful occult societies: Nazi SS, Freemasons, and Aleister Crowley's Black Magicians? In 1872, 33rd degree Scottish Rite Freemason and Confederate General Albert Pike stated in his Masonic lexicon book, Morals and Dogma, "Truth is not for those who are unworthy or unable to receive it, or would pervert it. The truth must be kept secret, and the masses need a teaching proportioned to their imperfect reason." History is a cavalcade of men driven to gain absolute power no matter the cost. By the early 20th century, Nikola Tesla opened the Pandora's box that would give the highest brotherhood initiates the key to such absolute power: mastery of torsion physics technology. In his book Reich of the Black Sun, author Joseph Farrell observed, "Our history began to be massively rewritten even before the end of the war, and has been manipulated to an extraordinary degree since then. Nowhere does that seem more in evidence than in the fact that there appears to have been a successful, albeit only prototypical, development by the Nazis of a very different type of physics that remains off the books." The will to power was what drove the Nazi regime in any endeavor it undertook, whether conventional military operations it conducted, to the death camps and genocide it was preparing for the world, to the occult and esoteric research of the Ahnenerbe. The power to tinker with the topological properties of space and the energy resulting from it is an absolute one, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. The most puzzling and disturbing aspect of the Nazi saucer mystery and the covert evolution of exotic Nazi technologies into our own aerospace and defense industries almost suggests that these technologies were never intended to rescue the German war effort in Europe. It is as if the visionary physicists and engineers were working towards some unstated future military operation of a far greater magnitude than even World War II. In many ways, these advanced projects merely shifted political sponsorship from German to American, continuing virtually without interruption. But very likely the most jealously guarded secret gained from World War II Nazi technology remains torsion physics, Tesla's key to absolute power. And full knowledge of such absolute power is not for the mass population, but only for the highest initiates of the world's managing brotherhood elite. So until the Nazi saucer fleet proves its reality by invading from the moon in broad daylight, I strongly suspect the Aldebaran mystery will remain just that, a mystery.